Sonic CD, a game that definitely has had some mixed reception throughout the years, with some people thinking it's good, others might think it's not good, and there's probably some people who think that it's just mid. Well, no matter what people think of this game now, there is still a lot of interesting things to be expressed in regards to the game itself, which is why in this video, I'm going to go through and explain a Sonic CD Iceberg of mine. That includes entries from the other past Sonic CD Icebergs, but this one does have more of my own entries added to it that were never in any of the other Sonic CD specific icebergs that were made before. For my own iceberg, I actually have each level represented with the same zones from the original game in their original order. I do have the same iceberg chart of mine on the Iceberg Charts website. I have a link to it in the description. Anyway, let's start to go through and explain the ultimate Sonic CD Iceberg, starting with the first level, Palmtree Panic. Time travel. Time traveling is the main mechanic of Sonic CD, where within each zone you can go past a past sign or a future sign. The past signs will allow you to travel to the past, while the future signs will allow you to travel to the future, where it could either be a good future or a bad future based on how you progress through the levels. According to the game's director Naoto Oshima, the time travel mechanic was influenced by the film Back to the Future. Sega CD or Mega CD. The Sega CD or Mega CD was a CD add-on to the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive. This add-on is what the game Sonic CD was originally released on, hence the naming and how it has CD quality music. Speaking of music, two different soundtracks. When Sonic CD was released in North America, it had a very different soundtrack than what the original Japanese release had. The original soundtrack used in the Japanese release was composed by Naofumi Hataya and Masafumi Ogata. The different soundtrack used in the North American release was composed by Spencer Nielsen, David Young, and less noticeably, Sterling Crew. The reason for why this different soundtrack was made was apparently because Sega America at the time wanted the game to have a more rich and complex sounding soundtrack in comparison to the Japanese soundtrack. Later re-releases of the game would give an option between having either of the two soundtracks to be set. Iconic opening themes. Some vocal tracks are used within the game's opening from the two soundtracks. The Japanese soundtrack uses a track titled You Can Do Anything, and the US soundtrack uses a track titled Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom, keeps you running fast. Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom, Sonic Boom, save the planet from disaster. These two different opening themes have become very well known by many Sonic fans, and are definitely the most debated on which of the two themes is the best. 2011 Remake. In 2011, a Sonic CD remake of sorts was released. This version of CD was originally developed by Christian Whitehead using the Retro engine. This remake makes the game be on widescreen unlike how the original version was. It also makes Sonic have a spin dash more akin to how it was in Sonic 2 and 3 compared to how it originally was in the original CD release. On May 20th, 2022, this version of the game became delisted on all platforms. I'm outta here. When you make Sonic not do anything for 3 minutes within a level, he will say, "I'm outta here!" and then jump out of the level, which causes the game over text to pop up with Sonic having 0 lives. The voice line of this Easter egg was removed within the Sonic Origins release of the game, along with the voice line Sonic says when he gets an extra life. Fun is infinite. When you go on the sound test menu and enter the code FM46, PCM12, and DA25, and then press start, it will give you a screen that has a background with multiple Sonics with a creepy face and some Japanese text that translates to "Fun is infinite" with Sega Enterprises. Mazin. Mazin was originally mistranslated as Majin, which means devil in Japanese, but is actually supposed to be Mazin since it was originally a nickname for the game's designer, Masato Nishimura. This secret screen creeps some players out when they discovered it, especially when they played this game through the North American release of the game. US boss music. With the US version of the game's soundtrack, it features boss music that sounds creepier than the boss music of the Japanese version. The Japanese boss music sounds more like a funky party, while the US boss music sounds just more eerie. This same boss music is used within the same Fun is Infinite screen from before, which is what this music has become strongly associated with. US Game Over music. Besides the boss music, the Game Over music of the US version of the soundtrack is also well known for its creepy and eerie tone that it has. Now let's move on to the next level of the Iceberg, being Collision Chaos. Robot Transporters. Robot transporters are machines that can be found within the first two acts of every zone. Within the present, it can be found but is inactive, but if you travel to the past when it is active, you are able to destroy it. Destroying it will cause all the badniks to disappear and make a good future within the zone. Destroying all of the teleporters within each zone is one of two ways you can get the good ending for the game. Metal Sonic Holograms. When you travel to the past within a zone, besides being able to find an active robot teleporter, you can also find a hologram of Metal Sonic crushing an animal. These hologram projections can be destroyed much like the robot teleporters. Destroying these holograms will only make animals appear within the level, and don't necessarily have to be destroyed, much like the robot teleporters. Sonic CD is set before Sonic 2. For a while, it was speculated that Sonic CD takes place before Sonic 2. People mainly thought of this with Tails not being present alongside Sonic, and how the spin dash in the game is weaker than the one in Sonic 2. Through the speculation of this, some people have argued Sonic CD not being before Sonic 2, mainly through how there's Metal Sonic, who has been used more times than the Sonic robots of Sonic 2 and 3. It has been argued for years until the release of Sonic Origins, where they made it clear that CD does take place before 2. Tails added to the remake. For the 2011 remake, they decided to add Tails as a playable character from when you normally beat the game as Sonic. Tails was also made playable in Sonic CD through the Sonic Origins release of the game. Speaking of Sonic Origins, Knuckles added to the Sonic Origins version. I'm pretty sure that by the time this video is uploaded, that Sonic Origins Plus has been released, and it now has the ability to play as Knuckles in Sonic CD, as well as a playable Amy Rose. When Origins was first released, it only had you be able to play as Sonic or Tails. People have always felt that they should have had Knuckles be playable since the first release of the collection. There is also a new route that is added specifically for Knuckles only. Unique bosses. Sonic CD uses bosses that are more different than how bosses usually work in the other classic Sonic games. For other classic Sonic titles, the bosses are normally defeated by taking 8 hits. CD's bosses are way gimmickier in how much you have to hit them. Like for the first boss in Palmtree Panic, you have to wait for Robotnik's bumpers to move out of the way in order to hit him just a few times. Or how the boss for Collision Chaos acts as pinball, with you having to use the flippers to get to the top just to hit Robotnik a few times. The bosses of this game are often criticized for how easy and or tedious they can be. Seizure-inducing special stage background. Within one of the special stages, specifically the 5th stage, it includes a very trippy background. Some people view the background of this stage as being seizure-inducing. Amy in Palmtree Panic. If you go near the end of Palmtree Panic Zone 1, you will stumble across Amy Rose, who will follow Sonic and also hug on him. Secret messages. When you enter certain codes on the sound test menu, it will show different screens that have different messages within them, which includes the Fun is Infinite screen that I talked about in a previous entry. Debug mode. A debug mode can be accessed through entering the code FM40, PCM12, DA11, and then pressing start within the sound test menu, which will take you to the secret screen that has Tails and the text "See you next game." Through getting this screen, you can now go on a level and make Sonic change to an object to place any items within the level. Now let's move on to the next level of the Iceberg, being Tidal Tempest. Amy uses cartomancy. With the original character description for Amy Rose, it tells that she has code reading as one of her special skills, and that she traveled to Little Planet from the divine messaging of the cards that tell her to go there. For a long time, this ability from Amy has barely ever been acknowledged, besides her having a tarot card move in the game Sonic Chronicles. But in recent years, this ability has been acknowledged several times through the IDW comics, the story mode cutscenes in Sonic Origins, and with Sonic referencing it in Sonic Frontiers. Sally Acorn in Sonic CD. This is referring to how within the North American manual for Sonic CD, it for some reason refers to Amy Rose as being Princess Sally. In case you don't know who Princess Sally is, Princess Sally, or Sally Acorn, which is her full name, is a character that originally introduced in the Sonic Sat AM cartoon, which first aired close to the same time as Sonic CD. It is unknown why the North American manual mentions Sally over Amy, but it could be speculated that Sega of America tried to tie in the cartoon with the game, since it was releasing not long after the show first aired. Past themes format. Past tracks for Sonic CD weren't rendered in CD quality like the rest of the soundtrack. Instead, they were compressed into the game, which is why both of the different soundtracks of this game uses the same past tracks that were originally done by the Japanese composers. Some people have thought this is due to storage limitations on the Sega CD, but it seems that it was actually done to still have the Japanese tracks of sorts be represented alongside the US soundtrack within the North American release of the game. R2. Within the level select menu, some people will notice that there was meant to be a level between Palmtree Panic and Collision Chaos. The chances of there being a missing zone seemed likely when noticing that a part of the game's ending showing Sonic going through a ruined area that is then attacked by an enemy not seen within the game. Years later, when the 2011 remake was being released, a Sonic CD developer diary video was uploaded where a sketch of a rainbow-colored waterfall appears, which was actually confirmed by Christian Whitehead to be a concept art for R2. Throughout the years, the original naming of the R2 zone was unknown, until earlier this year when within a message from the original game director, Naoto Oshima, stated that the level was called Dubious Depths. But then later, the original game designer Masato Nishimura claims that the zone was actually going to be called Ridicule Route. For the rest of this video, I'm still going to call it R2. Track 02. When you put the original Sonic CD disc into a CD player and have it on track number 2, it plays this. This short track seems to be what was supposed to play when Sonic time travels, since in 2 different prototypes that were dumped back in October of 2019, they used this same track for the time traveling scene. Hold out, programmer. Within prototype 510 of Sonic CD, it shows a rolling demo of the second special stage, but with a different layout and no UFOs. Throughout this rolling demo, white text flashes on the screen with it saying, "The programmer has a nap. Hold out, programmer." Special Stage 8. When you put in the code FM07, PCM07, and DA07, and press start on the sound test screen, it will take you to a secret 8th special stage that has a giant Robotnik face that stays in place within the background. When you destroy all of the UFOs within the stage, instead of giving you a time stone, it will take you to a special stage credit screen. Removed lyrics in remake. In the 2011 remake, the Japanese opening and ending themes had the original vocals removed. It was never explained why the lyrics were removed, but some people have speculated that they were removed due to licensing issues or that one of the vocalists, Casey Rankin, passed away a few years before the remake was released, so Sega wanted his vocals to be removed out of respect to him. The original editions of the music tracks did return in the Sonic Origins release of the game. Desert Dazzle. Desert Dazzle was a new zone that was planned to be in the 2011 remake of Sonic CD until it was scrapped. You can find a mock-up image of the zone through entering the code PCM32 and DA08 on the sound test screen. A test version of the zone can be found in the game's files. Final Fever. Final Fever was an alternate final boss that was also planned to be in the 2011 remake until it was scrapped. It would have been accessed when you got all of the time stones and then beat the normal final boss in Metallic Madness Zone 3. Sonic CD title screen meme. So, have you ever seen this image be used as a meme? Well, this is supposed to be one of the frames of Sonic within the title screen as he's turning, except one frame of it specifically has straight arms edited into it. The exact origin of this edited frame is unknown. You Can Do Anything is similar to Green Hill Zone's music. For the Japanese opening theme, You Can Do Anything, it sounds very similar to the music of Green Hill's Zone from the 8-bit version of Sonic 2. For why these two tracks sound similar to one another is likely because the composers of the Japanese soundtrack also worked on several tracks for the 8-bit version of Sonic 2. And for which was made first is unknown, but I feel that it is most likely that the opening theme was made first since these two games were worked on within the same time. Bad Future is canon. It has been theorized that Sonic canonically got a bad future in Sonic CD. People mainly think of this because of how in Sonic Generations, Classic Sonic is fighting against Metal Sonic in the Bad Future version of Stardust Speedway, and in Sonic 4 Episode Metal, it starts with Metal Sonic being knocked out within the Bad Future version of Stardust Speedway. Some people might look at these details and meaning that the bad ending of Sonic CD is canon, but it's likely that Sonic could have gotten all of the time stones when going through Metallic Madness. Now let's move on to the next level of the iceberg, being Quartz Quadrant. Prototypes. Throughout the years, many prototypes have been found of this game. The earliest prototype that was dumped back in 2000 was called Prototype 510. Many years later, on October 26, 2019, a build that is older than the Prototype 510 was dumped. In total, there have been 11 builds discovered, including 4 that was before the game was released outside of Japan. Beta bosses. Sonic CD originally had bosses that were ultimately scrapped, such as an earlier version of the Palmtree Panic boss that uses pincers rather than some bouncers. And then there is the unused R2 zone boss that has Robotnik on a vehicle with a spring at the end. Unused sprites. There are multiple sprites of Sonic that went unused, such as ones with him being electrocuted, which could have been used for when Sonic hits the electric hazards in Wacky Workbench. There is also some silly looking ones, like one with him walking and waving his arms, and one with him being upside down. Unused objects. There are also some objects that went unused, such as some different flowers that actually change color, and some stage hazards like some circulating teleporters that would have been used in Collision Chaos, and a trapdoor that would have been used in Metallic Madness. Unused loops. Within one Sonic CD prototypes, there were some unused track loops that were found within it that are supposed to be for every present and future track as well as the boss tracks. Some of these unused loops got used in the 2011 remake, and around the same year, designer Masato Nishimura confirms that the loops were meant to play after the level tracks cut off. Salad Plain. Salad Plain was the original naming of the first zone of the game Palmtree Panic. This was discovered through the dumped version 0.02 build, where within the time attack menu, the name Salad Plain can be seen. Early uncompressed Palmtree Panic passed. Within the same build that the name Salad Plain was found, an uncompressed version of the music that would play in Palmtree Panic Past is used when traveling to the past. Sonic the Hedgehog Remix. Sonic the Hedgehog Remix is an album done by the original Japanese composers of the game, and it was released a year after Sonic CD was released. One track from the album named Brand New World is used within the time attack menu of the 2011 remake. Sonic the Hedgehog Boom. Sonic the Hedgehog Boom, or Sonic Boom, which is probably what it can shortly be called, is an album that mostly includes some extended renditions of most of the tracks from the US soundtrack of Sonic CD. This album also includes several Sonic Spinball remixes as well, since the game's music was made in the US. Some of the extended parts of the US Sonic CD tracks did get added into the 2011 remake. Statues in Wacky Workbench. Within Zone 1 of Wacky Workbench, a secret room can be found that includes an angel statue that can give you wings. When you try to go into the same secret room within the Bad Future variant, you can find a Robotnik statue that you can destroy, but it will trigger a set of bombs that will drop down within the same room. Getting 999 rings in Wacky Workbench. It is possible to get the maximum of 999 rings in Wacky Workbench, specifically in Zone 1. This can actually be done with the secret angel statue in the past variant of the level that throws out rings. You can actually make it constantly do this when going away and back into the secret room that the statue can be found in. Now let's move on to the next level of the Iceberg, being Wacky Workbench. Collision Chaos Ceiling. If you look at the whole background of Collision Chaos, no matter which time period it's on, you can notice that there seems to be a reflection of the area within the sky. This reflection likely supposed to come from the water of the Nether Lake that Little Planet is chained over. Stardust Speedway Zone 2 buildings. Within Zone 2 of Stardust Speedway, there is a particular area that the player can vertically go up through, which is that of a building that changes design based on which time period you are in. When you are in the present, the building is an unfinished giant Robotnik statue. In both the past and good future, the building is a cathedral, and in the bad future, the building is a fully finished giant Robotnik statue. Sonic and Eggman monitors in Quartz Quadrant Future. In the future variants of Quartz Quadrant, you can find one background monitor that has either Sonic or Robotnik on them. The monitors can easily be viewed in Zone 3 when you simply look up at the beginning. Sonic sneezing. Sonic was originally meant to have the ability where he would sneeze through sensing danger, more akin to Spider-Man's Spider Sense. This ability is referenced in the opening of Sonic's CD, where Sonic does sneeze before some rocks fall down on him. Besides this part of the Sonic CD opening, this ability has rarely ever been used in much Sonic media. Beta theme. Within one of the early prototypes of Sonic's CD, it includes a different track for the game's title screen compared to the final game. The same prototypes also have a different version of the Speed Shoes music compared to the final game. Unused voice clips. There are a few voice clips that went unused in the final game. These voice clips include Sonic saying "Alright!" and him saying "Yeah!" For the first voice clip, Nishimura, who originally did the voice clips for Sonic, says that this was meant to be used when you clear a level in the game. For the second voice clip, it was used in some prototypes as an extra life sound, but it was replaced with the "Yes!" voice clip in the final game. Special stages were inspired by Super Mario Kart. Many people have stated how the special stages of this game look like Super Mario Kart tracks with its use of Mode 7-like graphics, and how you have to go around a track of sorts. Well, it seems that the special stages were actually inspired by Super Mario Kart, since the designer Nishimura later confirmed that after originally wanting to incorporate Sonic 1 styled special stages in the game, they wanted to make a special stage that looked like Super Mario Kart, since that game was popular around the time Sonic CD was developed. DA Garden theme was originally meant to be R2 Good Future. Years ago, designer Nishimura has said that the music used for the DA Garden was originally meant to be the Good Future theme for the scrapped R2 zone. I also like to add to this entry that people have speculated that the track Sonic's Theme from the Sonic the Hedgehog remix album is actually meant to be the Good Future theme of R2, while knowing that a part of the track Techno Power remix arranges part of the same DA Garden theme. next level of the Iceberg being Stardust Speedway. Amy is from Little Planet. People originally have thought that Amy Rose came from Little Planet. This was thought of through how in the game, players would first see Amy in either Little Planet or Collision Chaos. Another reason why people thought she was from Little Planet was through how thinking that there was no way for her to go up the chain that was connected to the Little Planet like Sonic did. This belief was obviously debunked since there is the original character description for Amy in the Japanese manual that tells that she came to Little Planet. The story mode cutscene from Origins also have made this apparent. Sonic CD zones are based on Sonic 1's zones. It can be noticed that most of the zones from Sonic CD seem to generally be based on the zones of Sonic 1. The first zone, Palmtree Panic, is like Green Hill Zone, with both of them being set in a natural plain with palm trees. The scrapped R2 zone that was supposed to be after Palmtree Panic seems to be like Marble Zone, with it having a ancient ruin theme to it. Collision Chaos is like Spring Yard Zone with its use of springs and bumpers. Tidal Tempest is like Lapham Zone with both of them being underwater ruins. Stardust Speedway is like Starlight Zone with both of them being set in a city at night. And lastly, Metallic Madness is like Scrap Brain, with both of them being industrial zones that you go through before the final boss. Zones locations. In the DA Garden, there is a spinning sprite of Little Planet. Within this sprite of Little Planet, it can be figured out which of the areas that can be seen are supposed to be the original zones of the game. Like this top area being Palmtree Panic, the island in the left center being Quartz Quadrant, and Stardust Speedway being the area at the bottom left, with it using the same Robotnik statue from the actual level. Some of the other zone locations can still be debated upon. Floating Islands. Within Collision Chaos Past, some floating island platforms can be found. These islands do not appear in any of the other time periods. Studio Junio. Studio Junio is the anime studio that originally animated the opening and ending cutscenes of Sonic CD. Many people commonly believe that the cutscenes were originally made by Toei Animation, which is not true. Anti-piracy. Many people used to believe that the secret Fun is Infinite screen was originally meant to be an anti-piracy screen due to its creepy vibe. But this is unlikely never to have been the case. Why the US soundtrack uses female vocals. The US Sonic CD soundtrack generally uses female vocals that are done by the music group Pastiche. The reason for why the soundtrack mainly uses some female vocalists is because, according to the composer Spencer Nielsen, it is because of the game's inclusion of the new female character at the time, Amy Rose. You know, this makes the vocals in the beginning of Amy's theme from Sonic Adventure make more sense in how they sort of sound like some of the vocals of the US Sonic CD soundtrack. Alex Lee, Take It. Alex Lee, Take It is an EDM track originally released in 1991. This track was used in some supposed leaks of the R2 Zone's music, with the zone being called Relic Ruins. These obviously weren't real track leaks, and were generally some past and future style remix of the original music by Alex Lee. These remixes were originally made by the YouTuber JoeX777. US Past Themes. On YouTube, some music channels have made some fan-made US past tracks since the original US soundtrack didn't have their own past tracks. One YouTube channel named King Media Studios have originally made some US past track concepts several years ago. Some fans have liked to interpret these fan-made tracks as being the actual past tracks of the US soundtrack, which is what I have liked to believe myself, originally. Now let's move on to the next level of the iceberg, being Metallic Madness. Meaning of Collision Chaos Signs. Once again, another entry regarding Collision Chaos. So within the backgrounds of Collision Chaos, there are these neon light signs that seem to have some words on them. It can be thought that these signs are supposed to say something, but they actually really are just gibberish. Metallic Madness is artificial land. It is possible that the level Metallic Madness was artificially made by Robotnik. This can be believed with how the past variant of the level still looks entirely made of machinery compared to the other past variants of the other levels. Floating Green Planet. On the Little Planet sprite map, there is a floating island that can be seen. It is unknown what this floating island is actually supposed to be. Mercury Mine. Mercury Mine was a given name of the R2 zone through a supposed Sonic CD409 prototype that was dumped. This prototype was then found to have been a hoax created by a Sonic fan scene member named Nemesis. Time Stone's true power. It can be understood that the Time Stones have the power to control time, but there is more to them than that, since according to the original Japanese manual, the Time Stones can help create miracles through turning a desert into a jungle or cleaning polluted lakes. It also seems that having at least one Time Stone can transport a planet back to where it was, like what is shown in the bad ending of the game. Little Planet Lore. The known lore of the Little Planet is that it appears 1 month of every year above the Nether Lake. The Little Planet always hosted the Time Stones which Robotnik eventually took hold of to mess with the past, thus taking it over while it is chained into a giant rock. Little Planet Inhabitants. Generally, the only known inhabitants of Little Planet are that of some small animals that Sonic would commonly save in all of the classic games. It's never been clear what actual people of sort live natively on the planet, but it's most likely some humans through the angel statue that's in Wacky Workbench. Little Planet Past Map. The map sprite of Little Planet in the DA Garden has 3 different variants, being the present, good future, and bad future variant, which it can be changed between when picking a certain track. But through this, there is no past variant of the Little Planet map, since you can't listen to the past tracks in the DA Garden, with how they are not CD quality tracks. It is possible that there could be a past variant made but was never used. Peel Out plus Pause. There is a glitch in the original Sega CD version of the game where if you super peel out next to a wall, then pause, then hold down right, unpause to have Sonic move a bit crouching, pause again, now holding upright, then unpause, and you will be able to go through a wall. It seems that people have originally thought that this glitch was only possible through using a tool assist. Act 2 of Stardust Speedway and Metallic Madness are between the present and bad future. This entry is technically more related to Sonic Mania, but I have decided to have this be part of the Iceberg anyway. So, in Act 2 of Stardust Speedway from Mania, there is a fully finished Robotnik statue in the background of the third phase of the Metal Sonic boss. In Sonic CD, this same statue can be seen fully finished in the Bad Future variant of the same zone. And in Act 2 of Metallic Madness in Mania, a part of the background resembles the Bad Future variant of Metallic Madness from Sonic CD. With these details from the level, it can be believed that the Act 2 versions of these zones in Sonic Mania are between the present and Bad Future variants. Metal Sonic's mouth. In the North American box art, if you look closely at Metal Sonic's face, you can notice that he has a mouth. It looks strange, isn't it? You can also notice a possible mouth on Metal Sonic in the European box art, as well as this artwork of Metal Sonic. But this one is most likely a reflection of his own torso, which could be the same with the European box art. Sonic Heroes Parallels. There are some parallels that can be found between Sonic CD and Sonic Heroes. One is how they both include Metal Sonic. Another is how there is a kidnapping done by Metal Sonic in both games, with one being for Amy, while the other is for Chocolat and Froggy, who were thought to have been taken by Eggman. One bigger parallel between the two games is the number of levels the games technically have. Sonic CD has 7 zones with 2 rounds and a third one with a boss. Sonic Heroes mainly has 14 levels, with half of them basically being like second acts of one another, such as with Seaside Hill and Ocean Palace. You can also consider how in Sonic CD, every 2 rounds of each zone have 4 different versions of it, and in Sonic Heroes, every level technically has 4 versions of this, with the 4 different teams you are able to play as. US soundtrack is based on the compressed past tracks. It can be interpreted that the US soundtrack was actually based on the single past tracks that were compressed and already made by the Japanese composers. This can be the case through comparing the present tracks and future tracks to the past tracks and noticing how they actually sound like remixes of those same past tracks that they are part of. For a simple example, the US Palmtree Panic tracks seem to arrange the 4 main melodies of Palmtree Panic Past separately between the present and future tracks. Another point I like to mention is that it not only seems that the US present and future tracks sound like remixes of the past tracks, but the whole soundtrack also seems to intentionally use instruments and composition styles that are supposed to sound like the same instruments and composition styles from the same past tracks. For example, all of the tracks that are originally arranged by Sterling Crew, which includes Collision Chaos, Metallic Madness, and the boss music, all seem to generally be arranged with instruments and a composition style similarly to the past tracks of Collision Chaos and Metallic Madness. I have a 7-part video series on my channel where I try to explain every similarity I can find between the tracks, and also a past styled US track remixes on my channel that are meant to demonstrate more of how the US soundtrack sounds like the past tracks with its instruments that it uses. I have emailed the composer Spencer Nielsen before about this, and he basically said that he didn't know about the music tracks while working on the soundtrack, which I feel no matter what he has said here is fully true or not, I still think this is an interesting concept for people to look into. Sandy Martin, People from Ibiza. Sandy Martin. You probably heard this song artist before, but in case you haven't, Sandy Martin is a Croatian music artist who made plenty of Italo disco songs in the 80s that were released across Europe. One of his songs that became more well known in recent years was Camel by Camel, which more people have known the song's existence for it being featured in an adult animation of an Animal Crossing character named Anka that was originally made by Zone Sama and became a meme back in 2021. Some people have thought that this music track that was used sounded like the music of the US soundtrack of Sonic CD. Well, interestingly, for one of Sandy Martin's other songs, specifically one called People from Ibiza, it sounds very similar to the US Tidal Tempest present and Good Future tracks. they sound very similar? Honestly, I'm not sure how likely it is that the US composers were inspired by the same music made by Sandy Martin. But if it actually were, then that means that the US soundtrack was inspired by music that no one outside of Europe knew of until one of the music tracks was featured in an adult Animal Crossing animation that became a meme. Now let's move on to the final level of the Iceberg, being Final Fever. Sonic commits suicide. Some people have believed that when Sonic says, "I'm out of here," and then jumps off the screen, he actually kills himself, with how he loses all of his lives and the game over text popping up. Metal Sonic is Sonic roboticized. There is a whole theory that the character Metal Sonic is a roboticized version of Sonic. The main reason people have thought about this is with how the Bad Future version of Stardust Speedway appears in both the Metal Sonic boss in Generations and the opening of Sonic 4 episode Metal. With how this version of the level has appeared canonically in two different Sonic titles, people think that there was originally a Bad Future timeline that Sonic went through and was defeated by Robotnik, most likely at Stardust Speedway. Sonic was then roboticized and sent back to the past to face the normal Sonic while also kidnapping Amy. This theory is most likely not true, since it's never been stated that Robotnik was able to travel to the past himself, and that only he was able to affect the past by using his robot teleporters to teleport his Batniks into the past. And also, this plan for Robotnik wouldn't really make sense, since he would really have already defeated Sonic and be able to take over Little Planet in its entirety. Little Planet is alive. It seems that some people think that the Little Planet is alive. This is probably because of how it's able to appear on Earth for 1 month in a year, but I'm really not sure how likely this could be. The game was supposed to end in Stardust Speedway. Within the ending, as Sonic and Amy are escaping, you can see a Robotnik statue that is the same one in Stardust Speedway. The ending also has the last clip be raced against Metal Sonic in Stardust Speedway that also have the same Robotnik statue in the background. With these details of the ending in Sonic CD, it can be thought that Stardust Speedway was meant to be the last zone of the game, which I think is pretty unlikely. Sonic Forces Parallels. It seems that some people out there think that the game Sonic Forces have some parallels with Sonic CD. The only type of parallels I can think of with this is how the game's plot, Eggman invaded all around Sonic's world, which was meant to be a world separate from the human world, like how Little Planet was, and how this game introduced the character Infinite, who was like a helper of Eggman, like how Metal Sonic was in CD. Also, with this, you can probably connect the character Infinite with the secret Fun is Infinite screen, but there really isn't a strong connection between the two besides the wording of the screen message. Sonic in the Fun is Infinite screen is actually Mario. Some people think that Sonic in the background of the Fun is Infinite screen is actually Mario, with how he looks like he has a mustache. This is obviously not likely true. Real life Bad Future is canon. We, meaning in real life, might very well be living in a bad future. for how much pollution there is being spread everywhere, on land, in air, and in the ocean. And there is also the harm that has happened towards wildlife, through them losing their habitat with something like forest fires, or simply having infrastructure being built around it. What is happening in the bad future versions of the zones in Sonic CD entails much of the growing environmental issues we are facing in real life. And to end this Iceberg in an obvious joke, especially after that last entry, every copy of Sonic CD is personalized, because why not? Or actually, what if every copy of Sonic CD is indeed personalized? Maybe that explains why some people see the game as a mess, while others have played through the game fine as any other classic Sonic game. Maybe this is why people have argued about which the soundtracks being either good or bad or not fitting with the game. Maybe this is why I seem to be the only person who sees the US soundtrack fitting well with the compressed past tracks, because the game personalized itself to make the entire soundtrack more cohesive to me. Sorry if I sounded frustrated. And that is it for the ultimate Sonic CD Iceberg. I know there might still be some missing entries on here, but I do feel that I have added as much entries in regards to this game as possible, which for some of them I have to credit the previous Sonic CD Icebergs that have been made by other people. Let me know what you think about this iceberg and how I have explained it. I will say it again that you can view this same iceberg on the Iceberg Charts website, which the link of it is in the description. Anyway, this has been Swap, and I am out of here.